Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, I apologize for being late, but I understand that you're all being very excited to know about the rights of the husband. Since we covered the rights of the wife. And I'm glad we began by that, because I have a funny story to share with you before we start. Once in the States, I was teaching a course about the mutual rights, the rights of the husband versus the rights of the wife and so on. And I began with the حقوق الزوجة, the rights of the wife. And there was a lady who was the first time to attend the masjid. She enjoyed the lecture so much, so that when she went home, she convinced her husband, who never set a foot in the masjid, that you have to come. The sheikh is so great, he's talking so great. Basically, she has something in mind. She's been listening to the wife's rights. And when she convinced him, the next time he attended, I was actually talking about the husband's rights. She was so disappointed to the point that she sent me a piece of paper saying, please talk about the wife's rights. Amongst the rights of the husband upon his wife, number one is at-ta'a. You can't imagine to have a leader, a person who's a guardian and who's not being obeyed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ. Al-Imam al-Razi in his tafsir says that when a woman is righteous, she's devoutly obedient. And if she's not righteous. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that if she obeys her husband, that means she obeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we have to put some, to frame that, to put some limits, to understand that this obedience is not for granted. No. So there are a few facts we have to share and understand concerning disobedience. The wife has to obey the husband. The first one, disobedience have to be in order with what Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded. So basically, there is no obedience if he commands her to do anything that violates any prohibitions.
Because our first obedience is always to Allah.
Exactly, any haram. Because the Prophet ﷺ says, لا طاعة في معصية إنما الطاعة في المعروف. There is no obedience to no one when it comes to disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Obedience is only whenever you're commanded to do what's okay, what's right. إنما الطاعة في المعروف. It was narrated that a lady from Al-Ansar had her daughter got married, and she started losing her hair. So she came to the Prophet ﷺ to ask him that her son-in-law asked her to connect the hair of her daughter with some other lady's hair. What we call it today, wearing a wig. Yes. So the Prophet ﷺ answered her saying, don't do that. Since Allah have cursed al-wasila wal-mustawsila, the one who connects the hair with others, whether artificial or somebody else's hair, and the one who asks for it to be done for herself. So لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق. So if a husband asks his wife not to fast during Ramadan, to skip the prayers, say, sorry.
This is haram.
Some husbands who are in business and so on, they require their wives to accompany them in business meetings, in business dinner or lunch, and they force them to shake hands, sometimes to give hugs and kisses to foreigners, to their business partners. This is, a part of the deal. So we say, at that, when the wife knows there is a ma'asiyah, there is a sin in that, she should not obey her husband. لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق.
So on the other hand, is that if the husband just ignored it without telling her, he answered the scene of what the wife is doing.
No.
Because I've seen this in Indonesia, the woman goes like that to every man, to shake hand. And it's like a part of their culture that they are doing.
It's understood that shaking hands with the person who's non-mahram is haram.
Yes.
And the Prophet ﷺ, even while accepting the pledge of allegiance from women, he shook hands with men, but when it came to women, it was just verbally, without shaking hands with any of them. You know, so this is very, very important. Some husbands even ask their wives to drink.
Yeah, I've read that
You know,
actually.
to
They've
what?
asked their wives to drink wine to fit in like in social situations and stuff like
No,
this.
and I had some ladies complain to me that she wanted to wear hijab because this is what Allah commanded her to do, but her husband would refuse so. So in this case, especially if the wife is newly coming to Islam and being religiously committed, she has to understand that her and her husband were in Jahiliyyah. She has to take it easy on her husband. But if the person is stubborn and he is totally of the guidelines of the deen, and he constantly forces her to do things or ask her to do things which will disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if she would do it, then لا طاعة لمخلوق في معصية الخالق.
طب Sheikh, imagine like, for example, I even heard this, like they already founded a family, they have kids, and her husband is still like living in Jahiliyyah, but she became religious and he's always against her. Would she ask for divorce then, if he always ask for her to do stuff that has nothing
This
to
is
do
a
with
very,
Islam?
very touchy question, because we're talking about destroying a life. We said that if you're recently coming to Islam and so on, maybe you need to have some patience to train your husband and so on. But don't compromise on the account of your deen. This is very, very important, because paradise is not for a cheap. It's very, very expensive. It has a price. ألا إن سلعة الله غالية ألا إن سلعة الله الجنة. Indeed, the goods of Allah are very expensive, because it's paradise. The second fact we have to understand and keep in mind when it comes to at-ta'a, the wife obeying her husband, is that the husband, whenever he would ask, he should ask for something that's affordable. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself stated that in the Quran, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah does not burden any soul beyond its scope. So when He orders us to do anything, it's something that's affordable and we can do it with pleasure.
On its
No
own.
Men
problem.
aren't that merciful though.
So one have to keep in mind this, understanding. One of the most beautiful supplications that the Prophet ﷺ taught us is called the dua of asking for forgiveness, the master of asking for forgiveness. He says, if a person says his dua in the morning, then he dies, he would enter directly to paradise. And if a person would say this dua in the evening, then dies, he would end up in paradise. He or she. This dua is called Sayyidul Istighfar, which is basically, Allahumma anta rabbi la, oh Allah, you are my Lord. There is no ilah, there is no God who is worthy of worship but you. خلقتني وأنا عبدك. You've created me, and I'm your slave, and I'm your servant. وأنا على عهدك ووعدك ما استطعت. And I keep my promise and covenant with you as much as I can. This is very important, and underline this. Even with this most beautiful dua, in respect of asking for forgiveness, renewing our covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say, as much as we can. So if this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what about amongst humans? وَأَنَا عَلَى عَهْدِكَ وَوَعْدِكَ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُ أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا صَنَعْتُ. I seek refuge with you from the evil of what I have done. أَبُوءُ لَكَ بِنِعْمَتِكَ عَلَيَّ. I admit your favor upon me. وَأَبُوءُ بِذَنْبِي. And I admit my sins which I've committed. فَاغْفِرْ لِي. So please, I beg you for forgiveness. فَإِنَّهُ لَا يَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ. Since indeed no one forgives sins but you. You're begging Allah to forgive your sins, to pardon you, and you're renewing your promise and covenant with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and saying, being fair as much as I can. Since the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, مَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُ. Whatever I prohibited you from, don't do it.
Don't do it, yeah.
Quit. وَمَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِهِ. And whatever I commanded you to do, do as much as you can afford. فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. If these are the divine commands, we do as much as we can afford, since Allah does not impose anything upon us beyond our capacity. So humans should keep that in mind, whether you are a boss at work, whether you are a husband at home, even with your servants, your employees. The Prophet ﷺ says, إِخْوَانُكُمْ خَوَالُكُمْ. Your servants are but your brothers.
Sure, Sheikh. So the best of obedience is out of love and respect, isn't it?
True, not out of fear. You know, al-qawama is some sort of leadership. And the Prophet ﷺ said, خِيَارُ أَئِمَّتِكُمْ, the best of your rulers and your amirs and leadership are those whom you love and they love you. They pray for you and you pray for them. You exchange respect and love. And the worst of them, those whom you dislike and they dislike you. And accordingly, they curse you and you curse them. You don't want to have this relationship with your family members.
That's a big problem.
You're being a pharaoh at home and they take
Yes.
but out of love and respect. And you pray for each other because you understand that you're asking them to do the best. You know, Sayyiduna Husayn ibn Mihsan said that my aunt visited the Prophet ﷺ once and he asked her, are you married? Do you have a husband? She said, yes. So he asked her, how do you treat him? She said, I obey him as much as I can. The Prophet ﷺ advised her saying that, you know, you better take care of him because your husband is either your paradise or your fire of hell. He's the key
Of
to
paradise
either one of them.
or hellfire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How?
He leads her to.
Yes, if you take care of him, if you obey him and pay due respect to him, he's the key to paradise. As the lady who came to ask the Prophet ﷺ about the men get to attend the Jama'ah and Jum'ah and the funeral and they go to the battlefield and they die as shuhada and we take care of their kids and we raise them for them and we guard their wealth and do we get anything of the reward? So the Prophet ﷺ said that being a devoutly obedient wife to Allah and to your husband, taking care of your family, taking care of your husband, that's equal to all of that. You share with him the same reward.
Because obeying your husband, you're obeying Allah.
Yeah, true.
I'm going to go and rustle up some food, some burgers and some chips and whatnot. See if my wife's willing to
That
cook them
sounds
up for us.
interesting.
So, it's
Inshallah.
time about food.
I'll be right back, inshallah.
Yeah, sure. Well, remember we talked about this fasting. And we know Ramadan fasting is fardu upon every one of us. So we're asking about this fasting that the girls do voluntarily, in sense that if she does this voluntarily, some men may ask to stop their fasting because of their needs. Could you explain more about
That's actually the husband's right. This is one of the rights of the husband upon his wife. If it is outside the fard, the obligatory fasting, she should not observe fasting in his presence without his permission. Safwan ibn Mu'attal's wife came to the Prophet ﷺ complaining about some behavior of her husband. And Safwan ibn Mu'attal was a great companion. She said that he makes me break my fast. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, why do you do that? He said, Ya Rasulullah, I'm a young man. I have needs. I have, and I have a very little patience. So, he's talking as regards of sexual needs. So the Prophet ﷺ made a statement which said that it's not permissible for a woman to observe fasting, optional fasting, voluntary fasting, in the presence of her husband without his permission. Because if she informs him in advance that she's going to fast, he keeps that in mind, so he considers that. But also, if the husband is aware that the wife observes fasting regularly Mondays and Thursdays, and he doesn't have a problem with that, so she doesn't have to ask him, on regular basis.
She doesn't have to ask him every
And
Sunday
especially
night.
if he's fasting too.
So in the end, in terms of the needs, so when a man needs, a wife have to drop everything and serve the needs of the husband.
Because otherwise, there is a haram way. And that's why one gets married, so that he can protect his chastity. He can find to fulfill his desire in a halal manner,
And same with her. She gets married
Absolutely.
also, so that she can fulfill her needs.
What's interesting was we're discussing that, she should not fast without his permission if it is voluntary. I hope that the case is common in the Muslim houses, in the Muslim societies, where they compete as regards fasting and doing
Praying
ibadah
at
and so
night
on. As the
and-
Prophet ﷺ says, may Allah have mercy on a woman who gets up at night to pray,
Yes.
and she wakes up her husband, and if he's too sleepy, she splashes some water on his face to
Mashallah.
get up. And may Allah have mercy on a man who gets up at night to pray, so he wakes up his wife and he splashes some water on her face if she's too sleepy. Why? So that they can pray together in the middle of the night.
Mashallah, beautiful. I wish every home in the Muslim Ummah would be like that.
We do wish. Once again, back to the rights. Coming to being a guardian, say that everyone is a guardian, as the Prophet ﷺ stated. So the wife too is a guardian, and she's in charge for her household and for the wealth and possessions of her husband. And she's not allowed to spend any of his wealth without his permission or knowledge. Unless if he allows her and he says, you have the freedom to do whatever you want. And with moderately. Because the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked about that, he said that it's not permissible for a woman to spend out of her husband's wealth without his permission. They said, what about food? He said, food is the best of wealth. However, in a case of giving a charity, the Prophet ﷺ says, if a woman gives in a charity out of her husband's wealth and possessions, she gets a forward because of spending, and he gets a forward because of earning. So two rewards for the same action. And this is a very smart way to double and multiply the reward
Encourage your
by
wife to
letting
give
your
sadaqah.
wife donate and give in a charity.
Inshallah.
But on one condition, that the husband is aware of that and he approves that.
I know with my wife that I give her like the amount of money for the household for the month. And whatever she does with it, that's on her. That's the amount of the money that's supposed to be spent on,
You got to keep
everything.
cool. You got to keep cool, or she's going to spend all the money.
No, I mean, she's really good at it. She's actually probably better with money than me. But if she gives sadaqah out of it, that's Allahu Akbar. That's what she can do with it. If she wants to buy groceries with it, inshallah, that's what she'll do too. But, that's kind of her role. That's the way it's set up, because I don't have time to be messing with
Yeah,
that.
just keep in mind, this is a marriage life is, is based on love and compassion. It's not a battlefield.
Like
And
companionship.
combat.
Companionship.
We complete each other.
No competition in respect of my rights versus your rights. Competition as regards good, righteous deeds, helping one another to improve themselves, to be better believers, to raise the kids properly, and to draw closer to Allah
Is
subhanahu
one of the
wa ta'ala.
rights of the husband over his wife that she educates his children?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because we said before that she's a guardian at home. The man is outside, he's working, he's earning to support the family. Most of the time he's away from his family. But a great portion of his time is to take care of his family as well at home, right? But most of the time, who's staying with the children?
The wife.
So it is a main assignment for a woman to raise the children properly, to teach them the Quran. As a matter of fact, it starts as early as once she gives birth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated في سورة البقرة وَالْوَالِدَاتُ يُرْضِعْنَ أَوْلَادَهُنَّ حَوْلَيْنِ كَامِلَيْنِ لِمَنْ أَرَادَ أَنْ يُتِمَّ الرَّضَاعَةَ وعلى المولود له رزقهن وكسوتهن بالمعروف. Look at the beautiful balance in this ayah. He laid down upon a woman the responsibility of suckling the milk to the baby, breastfeeding the child. For 2 complete years, if they plan to complete the course. And upon the man, the kiswa, or risk to provide for them, for the children, and for the mother. and to clothe them, spending. So keeping balance is a very, very beautiful thing. Unfortunately, many mothers, they get up at noon almost. They're not working. So they get up at noon. And once they get up, they start flipping the channels. The kids are playing around, doing nothing if they're not at school or during the summer vacation. She's not keeping in mind that she's setting the rule. That this is a little idol there, the TV.
Yeah.
So they copy her, and they learn from the TV and the TV doesn't teach much, but harmful things in most cases.
Commercialism.
Well, in the land I come from, majority of parents are out, so their education to their child mostly their mates, Indonesian mates. They speak better Indonesian than they speak their language.
That comes to talk about another right, which is the right of the husband of having his wife stay at home. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated that وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, and stay and settle down at your homes, your houses. Why? Because somebody has to manage the inside and somebody have to work outside to support the inside. So managing the inside was mainly the job of
the wife.
The wife.
The wife, sorry.
Sometimes, however, that a woman have to work to give a hand to the husband because he's very poor, not just because they have to buy another car or move to a bigger house, just to have a bigger saving. No, there is an instant need and demand. Like Sayyidah Asma bint Abi Bakr, may Allah be pleased with them. She was married to Az-Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, and he was a great companion too. By the way, he was one of the 10 people whom the Prophet ﷺ gave a glad tidings that they will be in paradise. But he was very poor. He had nothing but a property that the Prophet ﷺ gave, and a horse and a camel. Asma did not have a servant nor a maid. She used to grind the seeds, she used to feed the camel, take care of the horse and wash him, and prepare the food for her husband. She was doing everything, carrying even the seeds on her head for a distance of an hour, walking back and forth. Now, so that's a different case. But if your husband can afford to provide for the family, then take care of your main job and main duty and business.
Raising the kids.
And I understand that this part concerns men more than women. But sharing this with the women will make them understand the fact that what goes around comes around. By the meaning, the next right is taking care of the husband's parents, especially if the husband has only one parent, especially the mother, or we call her the mother-in-law. In many cases, there is a constant conflict between the wife and the mother. Why? A competition over the son, who's the husband. So I say to the wife, taking care of her is like taking care of your own mother. And it's like a credit. You take care of her since she's an old lady, and she's the one who gave birth to your husband. She raised him, she prepared him, and she offered you him on a golden tray. So you have to give thanks by taking care of her while she's old. So, when you get old...
Inshallah, your kids will do it.
Exactly. You'll get the same treatment.
This is a wonderful concept because, in the West, in America, and in Canada, we throw our old people in a nursing home and no one takes care of them.
That's what most people do.
So it's nice to know that a man's right over his wife is that she'll take care of his mom
Absolutely.
or his father with him when they become older.
Now, before I leave, we should remember and mention those rights which are shared between the husband and the wife as well.
The mutual rights.
The mutual rights.
Mainly to satisfy the sexual desire. It's not for either one, it's for both of them. And accordingly, one must keep in mind that his wife has needs. And the wife would keep in mind that the husband has needs. And that's why when Amr ibn al-As, may Allah be pleased with him, stated to the Prophet ﷺ that his son is not taking care of his wife. He's constantly fasting during the day, praying at night. The Prophet ﷺ called him to him and said, Ya Amr, I was told that you fast on every single day, and you pray all night long. So Abdullah, the son of Amr ibn al-As, was happy to hear that and said, yes, Ya Rasulullah, I do. So the Prophet ﷺ shocked him and said, don't. He said, what do you mean? He said, don't.
Don't do it.
3 days every month should be sufficient as voluntary fasting. And pray sometime and take rest. Take rest and take care of your wife, of her needs. And he stated, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a beautiful statement where he said that, إِنَّ لِبَدَنِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. Your body has right upon you.
Yes.
And your eyes
That's
have
right.
right over you. And your wife
That's
has
right.
rights upon you.
Upon you.
وَإِنَّ لِزَوْرِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. And your guests have rights upon you. So give everyone their rights. Pay everyone their due rights. Sayyidina Umar al-Khattab, when he was Amir, who was patrolling the city at night, and he heard a lady, she was making a poetry. He understood from her poem, this is for you, that she was missing her husband so much. So he returned to his daughter Hafsa, and he asked her, how long could a woman wait for her husband's absence? She said, why do you ask? He said, I'm taking care of the affairs of the ummah. She said, 5 to 6 months as max. So he ordered his commanders to send the soldiers after 4 months period. So 1 month traveling, 1 month coming back, and 4 months on the battlefield or the army post. Keeping in mind that everyone have needs. Isn't it beautiful?
That's very beautiful. Very beautiful to hear
I
that.
believe you have to travel, and I know
I do.
Sheikh Ahmed has a long travel ahead of him.
I gotta go.
So I think we're going to have to wrap up this meeting of ours tonight, inshallah. and
سبحانك
next
اللهم
week, inshallah,
وبحمدك
we'll-
نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Ba